If you have about $1.5 million, you've got a $5,000 a month pension, which is about $60,000 a year. When can you retire? Can you retire at 60, or is that cutting it closer? Maybe you need to look at retiring earlier. Maybe that would get you excited if you're younger than 60. And so this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to use this case study today of a client we just ran the numbers for this type of situation and give you an idea of what this looks like to see of what this could look like in your retirement. Should you be able to spend more, retire earlier? What should you do? So that's what's in today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So my name is Joe Schmitz. I'm the CEO and founder of Peak Retirement Planning. We are headquartered here in Columbus, Ohio. We serve clients all across the country who have pensions and $1 million or more. We call them that 2% club because only 20% of people have pensions. Only 10% of people have over $1 million. Combine those two percentages, you're left with 2%. And you may be that Midwestern millionaire, that hardworking, that frugal, diligent saver that I wrote a book about. And so this is what we're going to talk about on today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement. And so when you think about having this type of wealth, many people don't realize having a $1.5 million and a $60,000 a year pension, that is considered very wealthy. That is considered in a great financial place. Remember, only 2% of people are in that type of situation. And so when we put this into numbers, we always want to really understand, what is a pension worth, right? If you get $60,000 a year, well, if you just get that for 10 years, that's $600,000, and that doesn't factor in any cost of living adjustments. That doesn't factor in any growth that you could get on that money as you receive it early on in retirement and over time. And it doesn't even apply that maybe you live 20 years and that's $1.2 million if you live 20 years, or maybe you live 30 years and you're close to $2 million, right? The longer you live, the more valuable your pension is. And so with that, that's not considered on your net worth. But if we're projecting you to live a 30-year retirement, you're 60 years old, you plan to live till 90, you're in good health, well, that's an extra $2 million on top of your 1.5. You could consider yourself having $3.5 million, which puts you in the very high top 5% net worth in the entire country. And so you probably never consider you're in that place. And if you go to your friend and they have $3.5 million, you probably think they're rich. They've got all this wealth. Well, even though you may only have $1.5 million, your pension is worth so much. And that's why you've probably had all your friends and family tell you how great a position you are. And I can tell you firsthand, as a financial planner who deals with pensions every day, that is something we can tell you, is that you are definitely unique and you need to be grateful for what you have. So let's kind of run these numbers. And one of the first thing we always think about is, how much do you need to retire, right? Because that's going to ultimately depend on this question. Can I retire at 60 with $1.5 million and 60,000 pension? That's going to depend on how much you need, right? If you tell me you need $1 million a year to live on, that retirement's going to be tough. Versus if you tell me you're going to eat ramen noodles and live in a cardboard box, well, then we can make this retirement work when you were 15 years old if you wanted to. You didn't have to go through all the hard work if that's the retirement you wanted to live. So most of our clients, they want to live a moderate retirement. They want to enjoy. They want to travel. They want to spend time with grandkids. They want to spoil the grandkids. They want to be able to do all the things whenever they want with whoever they want. And so if that's you, we need to decide how much you're going to need. And most of our clients, again, that Midwestern millionaire, one of the traits is they're diligent savers and they're frugal. That means they're better savers than they are spenders. And so they may have a hard time spending money. It's kind of like a light switch. It's hard to turn it on because all of their life they've built up these habits. And so we're often arm wrestling with clients to say, you can spend money and you could spend up to this and not worry about running out of money. And so that's one of the considerations we always consider with numbers like this. We have an asset longevity calculator that runs out. Here's the most you could spend, and we would run out at 90. And most of the times we never even come close to that. Or even if you only spend this much, if you plan to spend $100,000 a year or $200,000 a year, you may still be left with millions of dollars when you pass away because of that value of that pension. So let's think about this here. So let's say that you have $60,000 a year. We already know that's guaranteed. In this client's case, they also had a $4,000 a month pension for spouse one, and then spouse two, they didn't work, but they were eligible for what's called the spousal benefits. So they got half of spouse one's Social Security. So they got $2,000. So in total Social Security benefits, there are $6,000 a month paid out. And that's $72,000 a year. So 72,000, we're going to use 70,000 for easy numbers if that's all right with you. So 70,000 plus 60,000 pension, you're at 130,000 of guaranteed income, and we haven't even touched our investments there. And so if you have 130,000 of guaranteed income, that may be more, for this couple specifically, it was more than when they were working, because only one spouse worked. Then they made about $100,000, a little over $100,000 a year. So they're about in the same tax bracket as they were when they were working. But again, they haven't even taken investment withdrawals. So if they take investment withdrawals, they're going to be in a different tax bracket. They're going to be in a higher tax bracket than when they were working. And that's what we see with many of these 2% Club members that we talk to, that they're going to be in that type of situation. And you've probably heard you'll be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. That's probably not the case for you. So you may think, man, 130,000, I've never even lived on that in my life. Like, how am I going to spend all that? Well, that's something we challenge our clients. We challenge them. How do you spend more in your retirement? And that's something I talk about in the book, The Midwestern Millionaire. We talk about purpose of money. We talk about the fact that you can either spend it, give it to charities or organizations, or you can gift it to your loved ones. But you've got to do something, because you can't take it with you. There's no U-Haul behind you when you pass away, so you've got to make these decisions of what to do. And so let's say that you decided, I'm going to maximize my spending, but I do want to make sure that I still have some investments left moving forward. And so this is where we're going to start getting into withdrawal rates. What withdrawal rate should you take out in retirement? Obviously, if you take out, for example, a 2% withdrawal rate, that's still going to be $30,000 that you can withdraw per year. If you do that and you see a 5 to 10% return in your investments every year, you're going to continue to grow your investments. You're never even going to touch the principal with what most people would expect in that scenario. And so if you're trying to leave a legacy, maybe that's something you do, is to look out taking out less there. And so something that you've probably heard of often is what's called the 4% rule. And the 4% rule says that you can take out 4% from your investments per year for the rest of your life. And they're projecting out about a 30-year retirement, and that's an inflation-adjusted number. So as you progress throughout retirement, if you took out, in this case, 60,000 would be the year one number of 1.5 million, 4% of 1.5. But over time, you're going to need that adjusted for inflation. So then you can take out more than 40,000 each year moving forward to keep up with the cost of goods. And so that's the idea of the 4% rule. Some will argue it works. Some will argue it doesn't. I'm here to argue the fact that you don't want a cookie-cutter retirement plan. You want to make sure you're making the right decisions when doing investment withdrawals in retirement. One thing we do with our clients is making sure we're tax efficient. So if we have all this 1.5 million, one of the questions is it tax deferred? Is it all tax free? Is it split between the two accounts? Because that's going to depend on the amount of value you have there. But also, if you take a 60,000 out of your IRA there at 1.5 million, it's all taxable on top of your 130,000 guaranteed income. Well, you're going to have more of a tax bite versus if you take out 60,000 from a Roth account. And so those are all things that we have to factor into when we look to take out this 4%. And maybe we only look to take out 40,000 from the IRA and 20,000 from a Roth to keep us in lower brackets in that case, or keep us below Medicare premium tiers, or keep us from the Social Security tax torpedo. All of these things playing together is what we want to be aware of. And remember, I know I'm talking about some complex things on this video here today, but understand your situation is more complex. It's more unique. You do have a higher income in retirement. You do have a higher net worth. And we know that they're going to typically tax those with higher incomes and higher net worths more than most people out there. There's a stat that nearly 50% of people pay no federal income taxes. And that's obviously not you. You're always going to have to pay typically more in federal taxes than all your peers. And so, as I always say in my book, I Hate Taxes, is I don't want to tip Uncle Sam. I pay my fair share of taxes. I want to save money. I've never heard someone say they want to pay more in taxes. I've heard people say they don't mind paying their taxes, but do those people really want to pay more? If they do, then they can pay my taxes, and I'd love for them to donate money to the IRS at the end of the year. I've never seen that happen, but I do hear people say they like paying their taxes. So, whatever it is, I love the roads I drive on. I love the libraries I go to, but I don't agree with everything the government uses my money for. So that's your personal opinion of that, and maybe you don't care about it. And so none of the strategies, the tax strategies we talk about in this video, maybe that doesn't matter to you. But obviously, the Midwestern millionaires, typically one of the things is they hate taxes and they want to save money. So in that case, let's say we do the 4% rule. And again, back to our idea, like we can see clients take out 5%, but we even have clients that can take out 10%. That may not be 10% every year for the rest of their retirement, but maybe we decide one year we take out 10%, and the next year we take out 0%. It's all going to depend on how we can make things work. Or what a lot of our clients do when the market's up is we look to basically take the chips off the table. Now we can look to buy something that we weren't expecting because we didn't expect to get that much gain. The last 2 years we saw 20% plus returns. That could be something that could be advantageous advantageous. And obviously we're seeing the market, we saw it dip recently. Now we're seeing it come right back up. Maybe that's a chance for us to take some chips off, and maybe if it goes down again, we've got that basically protected, or being able to spend the way we want to, because again, maybe we didn't project in our planning to have that much. And so that could be an example with these inflated numbers that we're seeing right now, is you look to do some of those bigger expense items that you've been putting off for a long time and not sure when to do it. And that's part of the strategic planning that we always look at. First, maybe the market's down and maybe you didn't protect as much of your investments because you want to be more growth oriented. Maybe you go a year without taking as much withdrawals in that year, so that you don't have to worry about what's called sequence of returns risk. And that's about taking out money when the market's down. So 1 loss, taking it out, 2 losses, market's down. The question is how much time is it going to take for it to get back up to where it was, obviously in our retirement years as well. And so those are things to consider. So in that case, we take out 4% rule. Let's just use that for easy numbers, 60,000, and we have 130,000. Now our income is up to $190,000. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to take out in retirement. And so we got to decide what to do with it. And I'm going to bring back that purpose of money conversation. So you may say, I've only wanted 100,000 like this couple we worked with, because that's what they were about living on. And even they're going to be able to live on a little bit more now that they don't have the 401k contributions coming out anymore. And they're going to be able to save on some of those other expenses that they had during their working years. And so in this case, we challenged them. We said, you have a $90,000 gap here. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to spend some extra money? And that was part of their plan. They wanted to spend some extra money. They wanted to do some travel that they've been putting off. They wanted to start saving for their grandkids' retirement, which leads us into the next aspect that they wanted to look at, and that was gifting. And so with gifting, you can look at even gifting now while you're living, or gifting when you pass away. And so they wanted to do a little bit of both, because they wanted to make sure they could have a bunch extra for their emergencies during their lifetime as well. And then whatever's left would go to the kids. And that was something that was important. And that was another idea of why they were looking to do things like Roth conversions now, because their children are in higher tax brackets. And so they wanted to make sure that goes to them tax-free. But for now, they're gifting money to that. They're also gifting $7,000 to each of their children and their children's spouses, and they're encouraging them to set up Roth IRAs. And the great thing is we actually work with the client's children, and that's something that we do here at Peak. We're family-oriented. My mom works here, my buddy from 4th grade. I've got 8 friends from college who work here. We're a very close-knit group. A lot of our team members are family and friends as well. We have 2 advisors who are brothers. We've got another advisor with 2 siblings that work here. One of our advisors in the CPA, they're brothers, and one of their wives works here as well. And so we always want to bring that to the families we work with. And we joke with clients, and you'll probably laugh at this if you've been an avid viewer of our channel. We have clients that say, hey, we want to work with you. We're leaving our advisor. We've been with them for 20 years. We want to work with you because we'll be here for my retirement, for my spouse's retirement. We hear that often because most of them are, DIY, and the other one's not involved as much. And so they want to make sure a trusted team's there for them. But then they also say, we want you there for our children's retirement. And we joke with them and say, well, yeah, we'll probably be here for your grandkids' retirement too, obviously, with us being a younger team and being here for the long run. And a lot of people value that because, the average age of an advisor right now is 56, and there's 100,000 advisors retiring expected to be in the next 10 years. And so there's going to be a big gap. And so, a lot of our clients are saying, we don't want to find a new dentist. We don't want to find a new doctor. We want to have a team that's going to be there throughout. And so that's something that we value. But also when it comes to that generational wealth transfer, that's important to get right, because if you don't have a plan, if the kids don't have a plan and they don't have the financial habits built, or they don't know where to take this wealth and what to do with it, it may be not used as well as it could have. And so if we can start building out a plan, we know that money's going to transfer over, and we can start utilizing that within the plan, making sure that they're meeting all their goals and using it wisely. Because as we know, a lot of the time inheritances are just spent. And so that's something that could be very valuable. And so for them, not only do they want to leave them money when they pass, but they want to start gifting it now to use it with their plan. And so since we're working with the kids, it's easy for us to help them make sure they get that set up in the Roth so they don't go spend it frivolously. And we always say, if they don't go put it in the Roth, well, stop giving them extra money. So this is an incentive that they can get ongoing if they obviously follow the rules that you want for them. So that could be a consideration. Or it was giving more. And so for them, they had put off charitable giving for a while because they just never really thought about it. They didn't think they had enough money to do it. And so this is something we were able to encourage them and show them, hey, you got a $190,000 budget. You want to spend $20,000. We're up to $120,000. You want to give about $30,000 away. Well, now we're only up to $150,000. We still have a $40,000 gap of income. And what are we going to do with it? And so they decided to give $10,000 a year. And so we actually set up some more advanced tax strategy. We actually set up a donor advised fund for them so that they had a bunch of money and appreciation appreciated stock that we took, put it in the donor advised fund. We removed the capital gain on that. We were able to get an itemized deduction to offset some Roth conversions. And so we were able to do some more advanced planning. And then when I get to retirement, we're going to expect to do qualified charitable distributions and save on taxes on that as well. So we're able to help them have more purpose with their money and still have a surplus at the end of the year. And so with that surplus, we're still figuring out what to do with it. For them, they feel like they're spending a lot of money and gifting a lot of money and giving a lot of money than what they're used to. So they want to kind of see a feel of how this works. But I can tell you at the end of the year, I'm expecting them to go, what are we going to do with this extra money, because we got so much coming in, right? And so, another part of that is they could keep it investing and growing for more of a legacy, or maybe they decide to change their mind on something down the road. And so that's what they all can look forward to. And so some of the other things that we really want to keep in mind for this type of plan and case study that we're doing right now, and I mentioned Roth conversions and just more tax planning. When you have that high of an income and you have that high of a net worth, we want to make sure we're utilizing our brackets now. And we all know the 24% bracket goes up to about $400,000 right now. And for a lot of people in this type of situation, that could be considered relatively low when you have a $130,000 to $190,000 income that you're expecting to have each year ongoing for the rest of your life. You're probably always going to be in that 20%-ish tax bracket, if not more. And so maybe you look to start to balance that, starting to pay more in tax. So maybe they're 190, maybe they decide to do a $100,000 Roth conversion on top of that, so that they can have not all of their eggs, this 1.5 million, which is all tax deferred. Now they can start to have some both. So if they leave a legacy, or worst case, that it's likely going to happen is one spouse is going to pass away first, so we can prepare for what's called the widow's penalty. And so having that Roth in the future, maybe now their tax bracket's at 32%, because that $60,000 a year pension has 100% survivorship. They're going to have one of those Social Securities continue over, and so they're going to be in about the same income standpoint, but have to pay way more in taxes, which is going to bump them up to the next bracket. So maybe that's a consideration they think about as well. And then something else we really want to consider anytime someone's looking to take withdrawals from their investments in retirement, even in their shoes, they've got more money guaranteed, $130,000 we've talked, to cover their income needs. If they didn't want to withdraw money from their investments, they could just let the barns grow and be more risk aggressive and growth oriented with their investments, and that could work for them. They're a little more risk averse, and so they didn't want to have all their eggs in the growth side of the plan, and so they wanted to look to protect some of their assets. And we always think that's a good idea if you're going to take withdrawals, giving to the kids or giving to charities or taking some extra money to spend, because of that sequence of returns risk when the market's down. And so we always tell people in this scenario, you can take on as much risk as you want, as like I mentioned, but you also could take as little risk as you want. If you wanted it all protected, you technically could, because you don't need a 10% return every year to be successful. Even if you only got a 1% or a 0% return, you're still going to meet all your goals because of all that guaranteed income. And so we really try to express to our clients, like, what makes you feel comfortable? Like, do you enjoy seeing the ups and downs in the market, or does that stress you out and keep you up at night? We all know that over time the market's going to come back up. We say it over and over again, but maybe at this point in your life you don't want to deal with that anymore, and you have the flexibility to do what makes you feel most comfortable. Or maybe when the market goes down, you start to get worried and you want to move it out, and now you miss out and you lose. You take out when the market's down. And so maybe those things you can avoid by just being more stable and consistent with those investments. So we always sit down with the clients we work with and see what their goals are, what their income needs are, what their risk tolerance is, all of the factors that we need to consider. And then we put together a plan to decide, how much do we want in growth? How much do we want in protection? Where are we going to take out the money? Not only from what, protection or growth, but what tax is it going to be? Is it going to be Roth traditional? Is it going to be taxable, capital gains? What is that situation going to look like? So with that being said, you probably found yourself in a similar situation if you've been watching this video to this point. And so I just have to tell you, congratulations. You've done a great job up to this point. You're going to have a lot of excitement in your retirement. You're going to have that financial freedom. And so can you retire at 60? Ultimately, to answer that question, the answer is certainly yes for this situation. And we even told him you can even retire earlier if you want. And the wife said, well, no, he's got to work. He's got to keep working. We got to keep him out of the house. But obviously they have that ability to do what they wish. And this couple actually may work longer than 60 just because he really enjoys it. It's his, he has a social, he's able to get social with it. He's able to have that purpose to wake up for. He really enjoys his work. He knows he's living fulfillment when he does that. And obviously now they have the ability to leave more of a legacy behind, or give more to charity, or spend more if they desire. So whatever that may be for you, just know that you have the option to do what you feel is best for for your situation. So that's all I've got in today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement. We offer this often, but I want to make sure I do it today. A lot of people who watch our YouTube channel schedule times to talk with us, especially people who have watched this for a while. Don't be a stranger. Don't be hesitant to reach out to us. If this is the type of planning you're looking for, you may have watched 20, 30 videos and you're thinking, man, he's speaking right to me. And maybe I have an advisor and they're not doing all the work, or maybe I'm doing it on my own and I want to have a team there in case something happens to me or to make sure I can take this off my plate. That's what we're here for, especially those in that 2% club, those with $1 million or more saved, those with pensions. Feel free to schedule in the link below and we'll do a 15-minute call to see if we could be a good fit. I do want to preference, though, we can't simply work with everyone that reaches out. Our YouTube channel has gotten very big. We get a lot of people that reach out from it. But if we can see in the questionnaire there that it would be a good fit, we'll make sure that we can get you on our calendar there and see if it could potentially be a good fit to work together. So that's all I've got on today's episode of Joe Knows Retirement. For all you Midwestern millionaires and 2% Club members, continue to enjoy your retirement or enjoy preparing for your retirement and make sure you live and enjoy what you've worked hard for.